You think you're addicted to sex. You think it's lust, that you're weak, dirty, out of control. But you're not addicted to sex. You're starved of connection. Every time you touch yourself, it's not about the physical act. It's about something far deeper, something you won't admit, because no one ever taught you to name it. You're lonely. You're disconnected. You're emotionally malnourished. And so, the easiest place to feel something, anything, is through your body. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And this is exactly what you're doing. You think this is about desire, but it's about avoidance. Avoiding the silence. Avoiding the ache in your chest. Avoiding that brutal emptiness that comes the moment it's over. Because that moment after, when the high fades, when the pleasure vanishes, when you're left staring at the wall, that's when the truth hits. You still feel alone. You still feel unseen. You still feel unloved. Jung would tell you this is the voice of your shadow, the denied emotional part of yourself. You've turned to sex, not because you're perverse, but because it's the one thing that gives you momentary release from your own mind. But pleasure without presence is just distraction. And the more you use sex to escape, the further you drift from what you truly need. You're not craving naked bodies. You're craving naked honesty. Someone to look at you and actually see you. Not your image, not your performance, not your body. You. And here's the thing. No one tells you. You don't feel shame after because you touched yourself. You feel shame because it didn't fulfill what you were actually craving. You wanted love. You wanted warmth. You wanted someone to say, "You're not alone tonight." But instead, you got a dopamine spike and silence. And silence becomes a prison. Jung taught that what we repress becomes distorted. And in your case, you've repressed your emotional needs so deeply. They've turned into compulsive habits. You think it's sex, but it's your soul screaming for intimacy in the only language it thinks is allowed. You've been taught that needing connection is weak, that asking for closeness makes you clingy. So you've learned to chase connection through the back door of your biology. But your nervous system doesn't lie. That post-pleasure emptiness isn't failure. It's feedback. It's your unconscious telling you, this isn't the connection I need. Because true intimacy, emotional, psychological, spiritual, can't be faked with friction. It's found in vulnerability. In touch that says, "I'm with you," not "I'm using you." In moments that feel held, not hurried. And that's what you've never had. So no, you're not addicted to sex. You're addicted to the idea that maybe, just maybe, this time it'll make you feel whole. But it won't. It never does. Because sex without soul is a mask, and your soul is done pretending. You think you have a sex problem, but you have a suppression problem, a shadow you've buried so deep it only speaks to you through desire. Carl Jung believed that everything you reject in yourself doesn't disappear. It becomes part of the shadow self. And for many, especially those raised in shame-heavy environments, that shadow is sexual. It's filled with guilt, longing, fantasy. and above all, emotional need that was never given a healthy outlet. So you escape into fantasies. You numb through lust. You scroll. You click. You watch. You repeat. And you say, "This is normal." But deep down, you know it's not connection. It's coping. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And when it comes to your sexual side, you've never truly accepted it. You've judged it, hidden it, let it grow in the dark. And that's why it controls you now. Because what stays unconscious will always drive your behavior. You see, it's not just about the act. It's about what it symbolizes. You're not touching yourself for release. You're reaching for something you've lost. Closeness, warmth, worthiness. But because you've never been taught how to receive those things emotionally, you settle for a physical imitation. And here's the trap Jung warned about. When your shadow controls your desire, you stop choosing and start reacting. You feel an urge, you follow it. Then you feel shame. And the cycle continues. But the urge isn't bad. Your sexual energy isn't evil. It's just misunderstood. Because behind every repeated habit is a message your psyche is trying to send. That message might be, "I feel invisible. I want to be touched emotionally. I don't want sex. I want someone to care. I just want to be held without pretending." But you were never taught to speak that language, so your shadow speaks it for you through fantasy, obsession, secrecy, and the more you repress it, the louder it becomes. That's why you keep watching things that don't even align with what you truly want. Because it's not about the content. It's about the emotional intensity you get for a moment. A spike that replaces a wound. Jung would call this projection, where your unmet emotional needs get cast onto objects, screens, or fantasies, not because they're fulfilling, but because they're safer than real people. Real people require vulnerability. Fantasies only require imagination. But that safety has a cost, because while fantasies are predictable, they're also empty. And you know it. You know it the moment it's over. When your body comes down and your mind whispers, "That wasn't what I needed." You didn't want stimulation. You wanted presence. Someone to hold you, not just your body. Someone to listen to the ache beneath the urge. Someone who doesn't need you to perform to be worthy of love. But until you integrate your shadow, until you make peace with your desire, your loneliness, and your need for connection, you'll keep trying to fill a spiritual hunger with a physical act, and it will never satisfy you. That's why Jung's work isn't about judgment. It's about integration, bringing the hidden parts of yourself into the light. Not to destroy them, but to understand them. Because only when you face your real needs can you stop performing fake rituals to soothe them. You don't crave sex. You crave someone to hold you and mean it. You think you're addicted to lust, to pleasure, to release. But the truth is, you're addicted to a moment of escape from the prison of loneliness. Carl Jung said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. And what's more important than being touched, truly touched, by someone who sees you, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, existentially? That's what you've been missing. And when you don't get that, you start chasing the next best thing, stimulation. You take the shell of connection and pretend it's enough. But your soul knows the difference. You lay in bed after, and instead of feeling satisfied, you feel emptier than before, because the orgasm never reaches your heart, because there was no eye contact, no soul, no safety. And this loneliness becomes a cycle, a loop. Jung would have called emotional compensation. When you're touch-starved, emotionally ignored, or deeply isolated, your body starts overfiring the only system that gives relief: pleasure. You keep thinking, if I just do this one more time, maybe I'll feel okay again. But you don't. You never do. Because this isn't your true hunger. Your real hunger is connection, not just someone in your bed, but someone who makes you feel safe in your skin. And here's where it gets even more painful. Sometimes, the more lonely you feel, the more you chase moments of false intimacy just to feel like you exist. You start looking for validation through attention, fantasy, stimulation, not because you're obsessed with sex, but because you're terrified of disappearing into your own isolation. And this is where Jung's insight hits hard. What we repress becomes distorted. And your need for connection, repressed for so long, has become distorted into a ritual of dopamine, guilt, and confusion. You tell yourself, this is normal. Everyone does it. But that's not the point. The point is, does it fulfill you? Or does it make you feel more broken? If you feel worse after, not better, that's not healing. That's self-abandonment. You're not touching yourself because you love yourself. You're doing it because there's a part of you you don't know how to face. A part that says, I just want someone to stay. I just want to be seen. I just want to be loved without earning it. But instead of holding that truth, you run from it, because it's easier to feel numb than to feel rejected. It's easier to scroll than to ask, why do I always feel alone? It's easier to indulge than to admit, I don't even know what real intimacy feels like. But Jung would tell you, whatever you don't face will keep repeating. That ache in your chest won't go away. That longing behind the lust will return tomorrow. That shame will keep building until you do one thing. Tell the truth. The truth is, you're not broken. You're just malnourished. Not for sex, but for soul contact, for warmth, for realness, for someone who looks at you and says, you don't have to perform. I'm here. But first, you have to say that to yourself. You have to stop treating your body like a vending machine for comfort. You have to stop using orgasms as anesthesia. You have to stop pretending you're okay when you're not, because your loneliness deserves to be felt, not escaped. And once you feel it, fully, painfully, honestly, you'll realize this isn't about lust. It never was. You've been using your body to escape your mind, using pleasure to outrun pain, using stimulation to avoid the silence that keeps reminding you, you're not okay. But what if I told you, you're not supposed to destroy your desire. You're supposed to understand it. Carl Jung didn't tell people to kill their impulses. He told them to integrate them, to stop treating their urges like enemies, and start treating them like messages. Because that desire you feel, it's not evil. It's not dirty. It's not wrong. It's just misdirected. You've been giving your sexual energy away like it means nothing. But it was never meant for strangers, screens, or scrolling sessions. It was meant to create, to connect, to awaken something sacred in you. But instead, it became a tool of disconnection. And now, even though your body moves, your soul feels numb. That's the cost of living in fragments. Jung said, "The unconscious is not just evil by nature. It is also the seat of creativity." Your energy isn't the problem. Your lack of awareness is. Because when you use your sexuality to run from yourself, you lose the opportunity to become yourself. So how do you heal? You stop hiding. You stop numbing. You stop pretending it's just about release, when it's really about return. Return to presence, to feeling, to real connection. Even if that connection starts with yourself. Because the truth is, you don't need another climax. You need to come home, to your body, to your truth, to the version of you that stopped being touched by kindness and started accepting crumbs of stimulation instead. This is about reclaiming your energy, not to suppress it, but to honor it. What if you took that same energy and turned it inward? What if instead of escaping your loneliness, you sat with it and asked it what it needed? Maybe it would say, "I want to be held. I want to be seen. I want to be safe." That's how sexual energy becomes healing. When you use it to reconnect, not to dissociate. It starts with small shifts, breathing deeply before reacting to the urge, journaling what you're feeling instead of clicking out of discomfort, asking, "What am I really craving right now?" You'll begin to see it's not lust you're chasing, it's life. And life can only meet you when you're present. So next time you feel the urge, pause, not to shame yourself, but to ask, what if this isn't about sex? What if this is about me trying to come back to myself? Because your healing doesn't come from fighting your desire. It comes from listening to it. You don't need less sex. You need more soul. You need to know that your body is sacred, not a vending machine, not a battlefield, not a punishment. And when you finally treat it that way, the shame will fall away, the emptiness will fade, and connection, real connection, will finally return. You've chased pleasure to avoid pain. You've chased bodies to avoid loneliness. You've chased orgasms to avoid honesty. But none of it ever worked, because what you were looking for was never physical. Carl Jung would tell you, this was never about sex. This was about a soul crying out for connection. And the tragedy? No one ever told you that was okay to need. They taught you to be strong, to be independent, to figure it out alone. So you did. But somewhere along the way, you lost something sacred. The belief that you were worthy of love that wasn't conditional. Love that didn't have to be earned through touch or performance. Love that simply saw you, raw, real, honest, and stayed. So you replaced connection with simulation. You replaced eye contact with pixels. You replaced vulnerability with habit. You kept giving your energy to empty moments, hoping they'd fill the hole in your chest. But Jung reminds us, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. So what do you keep doing? You keep abandoning yourself for a few seconds of silence. You keep numbing your heart so you don't have to feel how much it aches. You keep choosing fake pleasure over real presence. But here's the truth, Mawa. You deserve more. You deserve a love that doesn't come with shame. You deserve to feel connected without having to perform. You deserve to rest your soul in someone else's presence and finally feel seen. But before you find that, you have to stop betraying yourself. You have to stop believing that you're broken. You're not. You're just human. And you've been lonely for far too long. So here's your choice now. You can keep numbing, or you can start healing. You can keep escaping your truth, or you can face it, feel it, and finally be free. Because this was never about addiction. It was about disconnection. And every time you choose presence over pleasure, every time you say, I don't need to run anymore, you come back to yourself. And from that place, you can finally build real intimacy. Not the kind that leaves you hollow, but the kind that fills your life with meaning again. No more shame, no more pretending, no more using your body to silence your soul. Carl Jung believed wholeness comes from integration, not perfection, not control, but honesty. And the most honest thing you can do right now is to admit, I want love, not escape. That's not weakness. That's transformation. Comment below, I want connection, not escape. Or share the moment you realized it was never about lust. It was about being seen. Like, subscribe. And if this helped you reconnect with your truth, send a super. Thanks. You're not alone in this. You're just coming home.